Hi, I'm excited to be here. This is me. So, I am Brittni Schroeder, and I am a business and marketing strategist. I help people automate, delegate, and eliminate in their business. I've usually been talking a lot about business, but that's not what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about my nonprofit and kind of my story. I live in the Spring area, and I have a husband of 23 years, and I have two kids, a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old daughter. So this is kind of me. This has been a crazy year, right? Of just trials and, and failures and just overcoming really hard things. And I know that we have all felt it. I speak a lot at schools when they're open, and this is one of the things that I talk about a lot, is just how to overcome adversity. And we've seen a lot of it this year, and it's been a challenging year. So this is what our life looks like, right? We look at this and we say, oh my gosh, like it's so overwhelming. What do we do? What do we do in our business? What do we do in our family? What do we do? Education. We're just like overwhelmed with all of these different possibilities and where to go and what to do. This is me, don't be jealous of the perm, but this is me, 1995. And I grew up in a small town in Utah, and one stoplight, farming community. I grew up cutting alfalfa for my grandparents, playing in the ditches, all the fun things you do when you live in the country. But when I was growing up, I think that I learned at a really young age failure. I was a late bloomer. I think I was wet 100 pounds when I was in high school, just little. And I remember I wanted to try out for this dance team in like the 8th grade. And all my friends were trying out for this dance team. And I remember trying out and I didn't make it. And I remember just crying, emotional teen girl. And I was just like so dead that all my friends made it. And I lived in a small town. So when I say all my friends, I mean, that's what it felt like, right? And then the next year I went into middle school, and it was, I think, 8th grade. And again, I was super short. Just a late bloomer, just a little thing. And I tried out for the 8th grade basketball team, and I didn't make it. And I cried, and I remember my mom, the thing that we did in small towns, because where I lived, I only had one neighbor on one side, and on the other side, it was cows. And so our thing was like, should we go get a Coke? Let's go into town and go get a Coke. And so I was devastated, and I cried. All my friends made it, and I didn't. The next year was high school, and so I wanted to try out for the volleyball team. And I tried out for the volleyball team. All my friends were doing it, and I didn't make it. Again, failure. I failed again. Then my mom was like, you need to be involved. You need to be a part of something. Try out for cheerleader. And I'm like, cheerleader? And she's like, yeah. So I tried out for a cheerleader. I didn't make it. Then she's like, you need to try, keep going, my mom. Keep trying out. Do drill team. And I'm like, drill team? And I tried out and I didn't make it. And, when you're a teenager, that's like pretty rough. But I think I learned at a really young age that I can fail and how to push through failure. And so I feel like I experienced a lot of failure early on in my life. When I was 18, my parents got divorced. Again, it's failure. So I graduated from high school, and I got a full-ride academic scholarship to go to Dixie College in southern Utah. And I went there, and I was all excited for college. I built it up in my head that it was going to be this really awesome experience. And I got there, and I'm like, this is college. It's kind of like high school. And I hated it. I was like, what? I'm not happy. This isn't fun. What's the deal? So I decided that I was going to drop out of college. My parents were thrilled. So this is my claim to fame. So I dropped out of college and I moved to Pittsburgh and I nannied for the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Any Steelers fans? Yeah. So I lived with the Rooneys and I was their nanny for 6 months. And then I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. So I moved back to Utah and I finished up my education, got my bachelor's degree at Utah State University in exercise science and health. So I felt like, gosh, life is hard. I'm failing and all these things that I thought were gonna just happen for me. It was just not what I planned. And I learned that failure was a part of my life. Would have told me that it's okay to fail and it's just a part of life. It's part of growth, and if we want to succeed, we have to learn to fail, and we have to be okay with failure and know that it's not a reflection of us, it's part of our life. So this is where failure led me. When I was in Southern Utah at college, I'd worked at a restaurant. I don't think they have them in Texas. Village Inn. Do they have Village Inns here? They're like IHOPs. And I had worked at a Village Inn in Southern Utah. And when I came back from Pittsburgh, I finished my education in Northern Utah, and the owners own the same restaurant. So I worked at the Village Inn in Northern Utah, and I met my super hot, attractive husband. He the cook, I was a waitress, and 3 weeks later he asked me to marry him, so it was fast. Don't recommend it, don't do it. But it led me, the failures had led me to that point in my life, and I married my husband, and we were both in college, and he's such a good guy, like cream of the crop, just a good guy. And I was just so happy. And I was like, this is it. This is all this failure. This is where it led me. So we'd been married for 3 months, and I wanted to go on. I had my bachelor's degree. I wanted to go on and do something in the medical field. And 3 months into our marriage, I find out that I'm pregnant. And I'm like, this was not part of the plan. This was not part of the plan. And we found out that we were pregnant and with a daughter, Taylor. And I gave birth to her, and she passed away. So here we are, having kids, and to bury a baby. And no, I was 21 at the time, 21 or 22. But I was young, and I had never experienced anything like this. And, it was really hard. And I remember thinking that, I'm a control freak, and how do you navigate through grief as like a kid? I was a kid. I was only 21 years old. And it was really hard. And I remember feeling like, when am I going to be myself again? This was so hard. And again, to me, it was a failure. It was a disappointment and a failure. I love I love this quote, and it's kind of become my mantra in life, that you either get bitter or you get better. You either take what's been dealt to you and allow it to make you better, or you allow it to tear you down. It led me here. Have you guys ever heard the term rainbow baby? So it's a term of having a child after you've had a miscarriage or a loss of a child, and it's talking about the rainbow after the storm. And so that's where it led me. And I never experienced love until I had my son. And you say, like, your first love. He was my first true love. I never loved anything or anyone like I loved him. And I think what it led me, the failure that led me here, made me realize like how much I loved being a mom. And this was my calling in life, was to be a mom. And I never I never knew that I could experience this much joy, and I still to this day, I say it doesn't matter all the success I have in the world. If I can't be a good mom, none of it matters. And this was my rainbow, and it just brought me so much joy and happiness. And so my husband and I had our son, and we had just built a house, and we were living in Utah. We were by our family. Both of our families are from there and live there, and it was just great. We had all great friends, and it was just, it was awesome. And then my husband lost his job. Again, failure. So we had an opportunity. It was a really young company. It was a medical device company, and they said, here's 20 states, pick one. And they were all in the Midwest, or definitely not in Utah, the other side of the country. And so we're like, his dad was born and raised there. It's just funny how it happened, because we're like, yeah, Michigan would be cool. My dad's from there. Okay, like we did not research it or anything. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Michigan. It's cold. So anyways, but we moved to Michigan and we loved it. I always say that happiness is not a place, it's a state of mind. And I loved living in Michigan. Don't get me wrong, 9 months of winter are rough, but I always say Michigan is the best kept secret in the US because it is gorgeous during the spring and the summer. It is just beautiful. So we moved to Michigan, and my husband had a great job. We were doing well, great friends, just super happy. It was awesome. Then we added 2 more kids to our family, my son Talon and my daughter Presley, and my oldest is Gage. And we were super happy. Like, we loved it there. It was great. We were really thriving. And so again, I kept saying to myself, all these failures led me here. This is where they led me. They opened a door. The failure brought me to success. Then my husband lost his job again. You wouldn't think medical sales is like a transient job, but I guess it is. So he gets a job opportunity in El Paso, Texas, right? And so I remember, you guys will get a kick out of this because we're in Houston, but I remember posting like, we're so excited, we're moving to Texas. I hear all these good things about Texas. And they're like, El Paso? It's like the armpit of Texas. So El Paso is more like Mexico if you've ever been there. So this is Texas. Since I moved to Houston, I realized, no, this is the Texas that everybody's talking about. But we moved to El Paso, and guess what? We loved it, because happiness is not a place, it's a state of mind. And we loved it. Like, the people, it's 85% Hispanic, it's on the border, the culture, the people are amazing and beautiful. You're on a military base, and everybody needs to live near a military base to appreciate the sacrifice. But it was such an awesome experience. You get to meet so many amazing people, and we were thriving. At the time, I had started photography. I was a high school senior photographer, and my business was thriving. I was just growing, and I had so much success, and it was like such an awesome opportunity. I also I was the owner and founder of a photography magazine. I was the editor-in-chief of Mozi Magazine. And we had this photography magazine that, again, just opened up so many amazing opportunities. And I was able to meet so many people. And I was really like life was really, really good. My work was featured in the Wall Street Journal. I was on Good Morning America, several other like publications. I was teaching, I was speaking at conferences. It was just such an awesome time in my life where I just felt like, gosh, life is good. This is where failure brought me here. It opened these doors for me. I've worked in the non-profit sector most of my adult life, and I was working in Haiti, going to Haiti. I was able to photograph schools in Haiti, and I was on the board of directors for a school in Haiti, and just life was good. I was very blessed, and this is where it led me. It led me here. This is where the story takes a turn. In May of 2017, my almost 15-year-old son tragically passed away. He was my first love. And the day I lost him, I lost me. And I thought that I was a really strong person, and I am a really strong person, but nobody can prepare you for that kind of pain and grief. No amount of failure can prepare you. Nothing you can do or say can prepare you to bury a child. But what happened next was so beautiful. We started getting letters from our house. I remember my son he was an amazing kid. And I know everybody says that about their kids, but he was gifted in every subject. His teachers, it's funny because I remember his teachers pulling me aside. They're like, "Did you know?" And I'm like, "What?" He was my first kid, so I'm like, "What?" That he's like gifted in like everything. I'm like, "Oh, really?" But aside from that, he had the best personality. I mean, just talked to everybody. I remember just all the time, he'd be up, I'd take him to McDonald's, and he'd be up on the counter with his arm and talking to the workers and just talking to everybody. And I remember one time we were flying to Mexico, and I kind of dozed, and I woke up, and my son was gone, and he was 8 at the time. And I turned back to my husband, I'm like, "Where's Gage? Where's Gage?" And we're like, "I don't know, where did he go?" And he's up there, and he's leaning against the chair, he's talking to the flight attendants, asking if he can speak in the microphone, and they let him. But he just had this personality that was he was just awesome kid. He was just a light. He was just an amazing kid. And he was a little entrepreneur, and he was the can man, and we got little business cards made up, and he would go door to door and power wash people's garbage cans. And I remember as a young mom always apologizing for my son. "I'm sorry he's bothering you," because he would talk. He did not discriminate to anybody. He talked to people of all ages, all races, everybody. He just talked to everybody. And it ended up being the biggest blessing and gift to so many people. But after he passed away, we started getting these letters, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters from people, how he had impacted their lives. And it was people he had cleaned their garbage cans. I mean, I'm talking like 5-page long letters from complete strangers about how he had gone to their house and how he had talked to them and played with their kids. And kids just saying he was always nice and things were wrong and he knew it and he would talk to me. And it was such an amazing thing. And after he passed away, we started receiving, flowers, and people were sending stuff to our house. And I just said, "No, I don't want this stuff. Please don't send it to my house." He wanted to be a doctor, and my girlfriend said to me, "Why don't you start a scholarship in his name?" And I said, "Okay, yeah, let's do that." And she set it up, and within days, $30,000 in donations were in the GoFundMe. One of my favorite quotes is Tony Robbins, and he says, "We only suffer when we think of ourselves." And I love this quote, and it's so true. This is a picture of my husband and myself and my 2 kids standing next to me, and 2 kids' graves. Half of my kids are in Utah, and half of my kids are in Texas. And I knew that I didn't have a choice to lose my daughter, and I didn't have a choice to lose my son, but I had a choice on what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I had a choice on how I was going to deal with it and how I was going to handle it and how I was going to move forward. I also had a choice. Did I want to be angry and mad, or did I want to show gratitude? And I never once have said, why me? Never, ever once. Because I am so grateful that I got to be his mom for almost 14 years. I'm so grateful for those 14 years. I'm grateful that I was chosen to be this amazing kid's mom. But I also had 2 other kids too. And you know, when you go through grief like that, you want to be dead. Not that you want to like kill yourself, but you just want to be with them. It's hard to explain, but I also had 2 kids that deserved a mom, and deserved not just a mom, but a healthy, happy mom. And I had to pull it together. I had to figure out how I was going to move forward and how I was going to overcome this. And we knew that we knew what we needed to do to heal. I've always been a huge, huge believer and advocate of serving others and being grateful for your own blessings. It can always be worse, and I knew that. I knew that it could be worse. I still had my husband. I still had my 2 children, and I knew that we had to serve. And from young in my life, I always wanted to teach my children to serve. And I remember when Gage was, he had to be like 2 or 3, and I was pregnant with my middle son, and we did Meals on Wheels. I did it for like 6 years, and I would load up the food in the stroller, and I would take them to these homes, and I would deliver food to the elderly or people who couldn't get out of their house. And I know that serving, when we serve others, like Tony Robbins says, when we take it off of us and put it on other people, that is how we heal. This is how we overcome our trials. This is how we overcome adversity. And I knew we had to serve if we wanted to heal. This is, another thing happened after my son passed away. We got a knock on our door. Now, at this point, he was in high school. He was a freshman in high school. He was a varsity wrestler. He was GT, very active and social, and we always had kids at our house. And I got a knock on my door. And then I got another, and then another, and then another. And it never stopped. These kids were coming to our house, and they needed help. They were seeking peace. They didn't know what to do, and they just started showing up at our house. Every single day until we moved to Houston, there were kids, anywhere from 1 to 30 kids at our house. And they showed up, and they needed to heal, and they didn't know how. And we see it today. We see even COVID. We see how hard it has been on people. It's been really hard. People always say, oh, this year was tough. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you think? Like, this doesn't even hold a candle. 2017, that was a rough year. But I saw that they needed me, and I needed them so that I could heal. And this is where it led me. It led me to a place where I knew that I had to serve others if I wanted to be better. So after my son passed away in 2017, we decided, it first started off that we were going to get together and do like support groups in the schools. And I said, let's get together and let's serve. And so at the time I had a kid in elementary, middle school, and Gage was in high school. So we started doing these clubs, and we're like, let's call it the Compassion Club. And we would go to the schools, and we would tell stories about Gage, and then we would do random acts of kindness and serve others. And I remember the first meeting I went to at the high school, it was like standing room only. All these kids, these jocks, these intellects, all these kids that claimed they were Gage's best friend. They all came, and they wanted to heal. So we started doing these activities within the schools, and people started messaging me and kids started messaging me from all over the world saying, can I bring this to my school? We need this so bad. I'm struggling. I need help. I'm depressed. I'm, anxiety, like all these things. And so we formed a nonprofit 501c, and we created a curriculum, and we help schools implement and start compassion clubs. So we speak all over the U.S. We have clubs all over the U.S. And we go to schools and tell our story, and then help them start clubs. So we were healing. And these kids at first were like, we'll just meet once a month. And they begged, no, can we do this every week? So we were meeting every week. And we were doing activities like gratitude journals. We were teaching them, and we're teaching them values that you would think that they would get at home, but they weren't. They weren't getting them at home. We would teach them about kindness. We would teach them about compassion, and teach them what an impact that they could make. And it just takes one person to make an impact. We were just getting involved in the community, and the kids loved it, and they were so happy. And they would come, especially the kids that would come to our house, and they would say, just feels different here. What is that feeling? And I would try to explain to them, like, this is the feeling you get when you serve others. We would do homeless kits. This is a Houston. We do homeless kits and take them downtown Houston. If you haven't ever done that, it's like the best thing ever. Here's El Paso. Gage loved pizza. And so in El Paso, they just had, their lunch was just an hour during the day. They could do whatever they want. So we took like 10 or 15 pizzas into the Compassion Club, and we broke the kids up in groups, and we said, go and find somebody sitting by themselves and go have a conversation with them. This kid in the corner was from Mexico, didn't speak English. These girls came back crying, and he said this is the first time anybody has talked to him in a year. Everybody needs to belong. Everybody needs to be a part of something. We wrote letters to people who inspire us. Years ago, I had been inspired by somebody, this very successful man, and he had said every few years he makes a list of the top 10 people who have inspired him in his life, and he writes them a letter. Do it. I do it every few years, and it's an awesome thing. Wouldn't that be awesome if you got a letter? So we did things like that. We picked up trash after a home game so that the janitors could spend the night with their families. Lots of people are overworked and underpaid, and appreciation and gratitude goes a really long way. So this is where we're at now, is we have to teach them. If we want to make a difference in this world, it has to start in our communities with our own kids and the kids in our community. It just takes one person. I'm super involved in the mental health part of teens, and they are struggling. And I don't joke because it's not funny, but I say we have all these anti-bullying campaigns. It's so big in the schools. But guess what? Sometimes the biggest bullies are the teachers and the coaches. They do the most damage. And I'm telling you right now, these kids need more positive role models in their lives. I mean, you can make a difference because kids need somebody that they feel safe and they have the skills to be a good person. And I say this to the school districts all the time. You can give them every academic program, amazing academics, you can give them amazing sports programs, but if you cannot teach these kids to be good human beings, they will fail in life. We have to teach them to serve. We have to teach them that it's okay to fail. It's okay if you can't do this. I'm going to tell you guys one more activity that I do in my club. I think it's really moving. I think you gave me the idea, to do it. But we did this activity where I remember I'm a really confident person. I think Gage got it from me because I'm very, very extroverted, and I love talking to people. I'm a collector of people, I always say. And I remember after my son passed away, it was October and he passed away in May, and I flew out to Michigan to speak at a school. And I remember the girl in the airport at Subway, I remember her talking to me, and her head was down. She wasn't making eye contact. She wasn't really she was talking really quiet. And I remember thinking that she was intimidated by me, And I remember in my head thinking, if she really knew me, she would know how broken I am, right? You told me that activity. And so I took that activity that she told me about, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that for my club. So I took it to Grand Oaks High School, where we have a compassion club, and I did it. And in this room, I'm talking like these big, athletes, these gorgeous girls. I think there was 30 or 40 kids that day. And I passed out the paper that said, if you really knew me, you'd know, and it was blank. And I got them back, and I kid you not, 35 out of 40 were, I am depressed, my dad's a drug addict, I'm suicidal, my dad won't talk to me, I have anxiety, I'm being abused, I'm a cutter. I mean, I couldn't even get out of the room. I was a hot mess the rest of the day, just so heartbroken for these kids. And it needs to be a priority, but we have to teach them. We have to say, it's okay to fail. Guess what? It's okay that you did not make the cheerleading team. That doesn't define who you are. And it's not going to define who you want to be, but it's part of it. We have to fail so we can succeed. We have to teach them to serve. We're in a world, go in any place where there's teenagers and they are looking at their phone and taking selfies the entire time. It's so rude. And we've become a world where it's all about me. It's all about, how do I look? What am I going to get? What's in it for me? And we have to teach them that we only suffer when we think of ourselves. And if you're feeling like crap, go downtown Houston and go pass out homeless kids to the homeless, or go to the food bank, or go volunteer in an old folks home, because this is our privilege. Born in America is a privilege. This is the privilege that we have, is we really have really great lives, and we have to learn to help those in need. We have to teach them gratitude. I remember I read a quote last week that it said, is your glass half empty? Is your glass half full? And the guy said, I'm just glad I have a glass. And we have to teach that concept. There's so many things to be grateful for. It's so easy to feel sorry for ourselves. And are we going to be a victim, or are we going to be a survivor? And it's really important that we have to teach this skill. That we think that people have it, we think that our kids have it, but it's not, they don't. We have to teach them that, guess what, life is hard sometimes. It's full of disappointments, it's full of failures, but that is how we make a difference. So I'm a business coach, so here's my call to action for everybody is, what are you going to do in your community? What are you going to do? And think about what sacrifice you can make. And I guarantee you in here, for most people, probably time is more of a sacrifice than money. And make the time to get out in your communities and make an influence. Be a role model to somebody who needs a role model. And there's opportunity everywhere. I always, like I said, I've been to Haiti. I've done a lot of nonprofit work, but I'm telling you, with right where you're at right now, there's somebody who needs you in their life to show them how to fail, how to be grateful, and how to serve others. So that is what I have for you guys. So thank you for your time and for listening. Does anybody have any questions? So with it was hard for me this year because there wasn't growth because I couldn't get in the schools. But more than ever, there was a need, and the whole time COVID was going on, I know people were worried about getting sick. I was worried about mental health. Like I don't know if you guys heard about Grand Oaks a few weeks ago that a kid nosedived off of the second floor head first into the second floor, nosedived off. Broke back, collapsed lung. I mean, and I'm an empath, and I grieve that kind of stuff. I get pretty worked up over like that. But so it was really hard. I think awareness too is just knowing, be aware. Social media is a major issue with kids, and that could be a whole other discussion because it's not healthy. It's really not what it does to kids. But so what's really cool about the Compassion Clubs is it should be a student-run organization, and our curriculum goes over that and teaches that, and then we do lots of supporting stuff. And so some schools weren't even active, but there was a few schools one in El Paso, they did drives almost every single month. They did one for the animal shelters, they did one for low income, they did one for, they were just doing a lot of drives. And I think it's important to get out in your community, but some of the things that we would send out, emails and say, go take your neighbor's trash and bring it in, or take it out to the street for them. Look for opportunities to serve, go through the drive-through and pay for the person behind you. You just never know what somebody's going through. It's like that activity. If you really knew me, you'd know. I think that's something I always, when somebody does something that I don't like, I always try to have that thought in my head, hurt people, so what's going on here, So I think it's just, being aware of the mental health and getting involved in your communities and with the youth. And there's a big need for positive role models. My son has a friend that he wrestles with at Grand Oaks, and his mom OD'd and passed away and left these kids and pretty much homeless. And they were staying at relatives and friends' house, and I remember this one, like any good mom, I check my son's text messages. So, but I was reading a text and he said something really vulgar. And then he was kind of giving my son a hard time, and I remember my kind of getting worked up because I was Mama Baron, and my husband stopped me and he just said he's never learned these skills. He's never learned that that's not appropriate, or you talk to people with respect. And so I mean it's literally everywhere that we need to teach kids to be good people. We're really struggling in this world. I'm always saying it's not a this problem, it's not a that problem, it's a humanity problem. We don't respect other people. We're not kind to other people. So that's kind of, it was challenging, I'm not gonna lie. It was a lot, so.
Is it primarily high school or colleges, or could you start at younger age?
So we have a high school, an elementary ed program, and a secondary ed. So we have two, and then we have clubs that start them. We had a cheer club and just different clubs, church groups, and the curriculum is just stories and activities of random acts of kindness. I forgot to tell this part is that the sell of the curriculum goes towards scholarships. So since 2017, we've given $25,000 in scholarships. And it's just to really good kids. It's these kids that aren't academics, they're not athletes, they're just good kids, and we've been able to support them in furthering their education. So all the money goes back to the kids and supporting them. He was a wrestler, and we do a big memorial wrestling tournament, and we do an award and scholarship to a wrestler that is not the best wrestler. We don't want the best wrestler. We want the kid with the most character, has the most sportsmanship. So I just think it's really important that we highlight that kind of stuff a little bit more because it's really important. So is there any other questions? Yes?
You don't know, it's actually teaching Grand Oaks.
You do? Oh. Oh, you are?
But I do want to say to make an impact on our kids.
Oh, thanks.
Say thank you for that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're hoping to get back there. Again, we were doing it in a lot of our clubs. You have to have a sponsor teacher. You should be my sponsor teacher. But a lot of our sponsor teachers are special ed. And one of our biggest clubs in Michigan, the sponsor teacher and the parent that was helping, they would call me every week crying. And they'd be like, oh, I have to tell you this story. And these special ed kids, there was one, and I think she was like 80% nonverbal, but she would every day, is today club? She was so excited to be a part of something, and they did like a homecoming float and had all the kids wearing their Compassion Club shirts and everything, and all these special ed moms were just sobbing because like their kid got to be a part of something. And so it's really cool to see what the different clubs do. They do some like just awesome things, and kids are like, there's some really good kids out there too, but I think it's serving. And even now, when I'm having a bad day, or even my husband the other day, I was feeling sorry for myself about something. He's like, we need to serve. I'm like, oh, I know. And so, but I do think it's really important to get out and serve. And it does, like I'm a business coach, and it's one of the things that I talk about all the time. One of my clients was like, I'm just really struggling, like, what's your advice? I'm in a bad place. And I'm like, you need to serve somebody. So I know this is Sarah, she's one of my clients, and we went and did food bank. I said, let's go do the food bank last week. And so we took my daughter, we wore our Compassion shirts, and we went to the food bank. And that's the other thing is I always, with my kids, when we serve, I'm always like, okay, how do you feel right now? Like, reflect, how do you feel? It feels good. Why do you think it feels good? It's because you're serving others. And I think that we just need a lot more of that in this world. It's been a crazy, crazy time. So, any other questions? No? All right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.